Welcome to our webinar. So we are the Revenue Growth Agency. My name's Andy. I'm the co-founder of the agency. And today we are excited to take you through our topic of fixing your data gap. I'm going to explore the importance of server-side tracking, which allows you to use first-party data and track that accurately in order to make your marketing decisions more accurate. We're going to go into some detail on this, but just first of all, some introductions. So we've got David Jaoui with us, who is our Director of Client Growth Strategy. We've also got sitting behind the curtain of her camera, we've got Danielle Gips, who is our Agency Marketing Manager, and she's going to gather all of the questions that you've got, and we'll go through those at the end. So just some housekeeping first of all. So by default, all participants' cameras are off and you're invisible to each other. And the questions that you have as we go through, if you can put those in the chat or the Q&A section of the team system. Danielle's going to gather those and we will address those at the end, because the likelihood is some of your questions will be answered as we go through the next sort of 10, 11 slides. It is being recorded. Everybody that has signed up to attend, if they couldn't attend but they've signed up, they will get a recording of the entire webinar. So hopefully that'll be of use, because part of what we want to achieve today is a step-by-step guide of how you can fix your data gap, of course. Yeah, feel free, as the cameras are off, feel free if you want to turn your camera on, you can do, but yeah, we will answer any questions at the end. So what do we want to achieve from today? Well, the first thing that we're going to look at, of course, is what the problem is. And then we're going to give you a step-by-step guide of how to fix that. So why is there an issue, and why does there need to be a fix? Well, first of all, back in April 26, 2021, there was a lot of technical updates by huge platforms such as Apple that were included in their iOS 14.5 update that protected users' privacy. So when using the Safari as a browser, Apple decided to introduce a block on any third-party cookies that were being served by the browser. Now, depending which stat house you're a fan of, but at least 55% of people use an Apple device, and therefore they default to Safari as a browser. So about 55% of your data after April 26th went what we call dark, which means you can't see what they're doing. So that's an issue. And since 2021, Chrome, which is Google's version, every year suggests that they're going to follow suit, and Chrome remain the only browser that currently allows you to serve third-party cookies. So it's a big issue, and it came to light that when and I don't know whether this is a post-COVID thing, it came to light when we start talking to large luxury e-commerce brands. The first thing that we look at is, are you aware and using server-side tracking as a solution to the iOS 14 issue? And most of the time they say no. So a lot of the decisions that they're making as part of their marketing are inaccurate. So for example, they're reporting the data they see in GA, the data that they see in the platform is only part of the mix. And if you look at the slide, the previous slide where we mentioned about 55% of your data is invisible, for some brands that's more, and for some brands that's less. But even if looking at the best case scenario and it's only 20 or 25% of your traffic that's visible, imagine if we could make another 25% visible, or even all of your traffic visible, and how would that impact your reporting? Particularly in the last sort of 18 months, campaigns like PMax on Google Ads and also Advantage Plus on Facebook are algorithm driven, which is fed by data. So if you're only feeding in half of the data, or even 25% of the data that is accurate, then those campaigns and the mathematics that sit behind them won't perform well. And what we've seen is when we transition clients into the solution that we're going to give you today, those campaigns significantly improve. And we've got lots of data to back this up, but sometimes when agencies do webinars and give stats, sometimes you know, the attendees feel like those stats aren't necessarily as accurate as they can. So we've used the BCG from May 2020 here, and the source is the Responsible Marketing with First-Party Data article. And they suggest that marketers who effectively use their first-party data can generate double the incremental revenue from a single ad placement, communication, or outreach. So the problem is huge, really. And what we're going to do in the next few slides is give you a solution of how to fix that. First of all, what do you need? So a lot of these solutions, like most solutions, are easy to implement in-house if you've got certain things to hand and a certain amount of technical knowledge. So first of all, you'll need Google Tag Manager set up. Most brands have this, but if not, that's the first place that you need to go. You also need some form of cloud server. Now, Google offer their own cloud server. We recommend Stape.io. They do the same job. It's just a server that's based in the cloud that you need. But ultimately, the example that Dave is going to go through today is from Stape, because it's one of the, as I said, our preferred cloud provider. You'll also need all of the relevant pixels that you want to track first-party data with. So, for example, your Google Ads conversion code, conversion pixel. You'll need all of the Facebook conversion API pixels and the and anything from that system that you want to track. You'll need all of those together and installed within Google Tag Manager, or at least you'll need them to hand and have them set up within those platforms to deploy. And as I mentioned, you need some knowledge of Google Tag Manager. You'll need some knowledge of Google Analytics. Don't worry too much about the cloud server side of it. That's not, you don't really need to know lots about servers or anything else. It's just that you need to set up a profile that David will go through so that we can implement what we need to. But the implementation on the server is pretty easy, so don't worry too much about that. But you just need a little bit of support, a little bit of knowledge if particularly if Google Tag Manager is not a strong point of yours or within your brand. So, without hesitation, I'm just going to pass you across to David, who's going to, as best we can, hopefully technology doesn't let us down, but I'll pass over to David, who will start sharing his screen, and we'll just talk through how to fix this challenge.
Hi guys, thank you for being with us today. So let me share my screen here. Yeah, so here you have my screen where I need 4 windows. Basically, this is the website where I will install the solution. And if I go to F12 and just see a bit of code, sorry for the technicality, but I just wanted to show you that here we do have a Google Manager, Google Tag Manager tag already installed, which is basically a lot of companies will have that by default. And so the whole principle of third party, and I think it's very important to explain that, is that our website is located at revenuegrowthagency.co.uk. So that's the URL, right? And you will have your own domain yourself. Now, what we can see here is that there is a JavaScript that is, or there is a script that calls a URL that is different than our main domain. And this is what defines third party. This is the first party because this is our own domain. Now, what all the platform editors like Apple and Google didn't want, and they say, wow, all those websites have a lot of calls towards a foreign domain, third-party domain. And basically, this is what they block, is when you call the tracking script from a domain that is not your domain. So the workaround, which makes it first-party, is that all the tracking services need to be brought back under your own domain. And this is why we advise to create domains, an additional domains for tracking, subdomains of your own main domains. So for example, we are revenuegrowthagency.co.uk, and we will track under the subdomain that we created especially for that, that is gtm.revenuegrowthagency.co.uk, if that makes sense. And so once we do that, the script, the Google Tag Manager scripts, will call gtm.revenuegrowthagency.co.uk here instead of Google Tag Manager. So let's get going. So this is basically a Google Tag Manager window with what we call a web container. And this tracks all sorts of data and bring it back to different services as Google's Analytics 4, LinkedIn, or the old Google Analytics, Universal Analytics. So to do, and this is hosted at tagmanager@google.com. Now what we want is create another container, which we will call the server container, and that will be located at gtm.revenuegrowthagency.co.uk. So because we don't want to have a server in our office or somewhere like that, we use services that create a cloud, which is basically a server somewhere that belongs to yourself, that's hosted somewhere else, and they do that for us. So let's get started with the procedure. So what I'm going to do is show you how, so usually you will have this container existing within your own company, and I'm not going to go through this, but what I'm going to focus on, I will create a new server, GTM container server side. So basically, to do that, I will just duplicate the window here, go to admin, and then push the little plus here from my web container, and I will select here server. I will give it a name. I will call it RGA server. We'll call it stream because we created specially for this webinar, and then create. Right. So here, this is where Google Tag Manager basically says, tell me where is my server, because this is a container we create on a server that is not internal to the service. So because I'm going to use Stape, and as Andy said, the reason why I chose Stape is because it makes it dramatically easy for somebody who's not technical, and even for somebody who's technical, to create that really fast, really easy, and the cost is pretty much the same than with any other service. So we do have a manually provisioned tagging server key here, a config that I'm going to copy, and I'm going to Stape, where I already created my own profile, and I'll create a new container. So here I can give it any names. Here it's going to be RGA server stream, but anything goes. Here is, I'm going to paste what I got from here. And then I will choose where. So the thing with cloud is that you have huge data center all over the world. Choose one that is close to where your business is, where your website is basically. Our website is hosted somewhere in Europe. We're a British company, and so I believe the most sensible choice will be EU Center Germany, but would I choose Finland or Belgium wouldn't make a great difference. I'm just trying to avoid Asia Pacific or Americas. That's it. I'm going to create a container. You can choose the free version, and you can pick upgrade container automatically, so it will dimension automatically with the amount of data that gets in. It's by requests, but it will adapt automatically. And then here I am. Now the next thing you want to do, and I'm not going thoroughly through that steps, but you would go here, and you would put the subdomain that you decided to use from your own domain to do the tracking. So for us, it's going to be this one, but because I think we already have it, I will call it GTM2. It's just a naming convention. Whatever name you choose doesn't matter. The only thing is it has to be something dot your main domain dot your extension, whether you're in a .com or .co.uk, depends where you are. And then I will push add domain. This is where Stape is going to tell you, well, if you want to link our server that you just created in your cloud in our cloud to that domain, you need to go to your register domain panel and create that record. And because we want to use that option, again, I'm not going to comment that a lot, but that can let's say increase the loading time or decrease the loading time and make everything much faster. So you definitely want to check that. So it will add another record. So I mean, maybe you work with a dev team or a dev agency, or you do that for yourself if you're a very small business, but you will need to go to wherever you created your domain. Maybe it's GoDaddy or any other company that sells domain names. And basically in the config, you would have a panel under your user area where you can do what they call DNS records, and you will need to it's quite easy. I mean, you should find your way quite easily, but you want a records that this is the domain and this is the IP address, and then a CNAME records. And once you do that, I'm going to go back to my existing container. So now you see it's verifying. Once you do that, you want to check here and it will browse. For me, it's going to go back to verifying, but everything, if everything is fine, then and then your DNS records are correct, you should see ready, and that means you're ready to go. So the next step is you want to go to Power Apps, Custom Loader, and click Use. You want to go back to your web container, not your server container, your web container, and you want to have a look here at what's the identifier of that container. So here is GTM-KCZTKJ4. So I'm going to copy and paste this and paste it here. And so if you're not on Shopify or WordPress, which is another approach, and I think there is a Q&A and a little bit of a comment time after I show this, we'll explain what happens if you're on Shopify or WordPress. So I will push other, and then I will generate a GTM code. And what it does, it gives you 2 snippets of code that you will have to insert in your website instead of the Google Tag Manager script that you do have. So remember, let me go back here. So here in the head section of my code, sorry about that, you will have somewhere where you have the Google Tag Manager scripts, and you can see that it's exactly the same script, but the domain name here, which is here third party, is now a first party domain with gtm.revenue-growth-agency, and same here, gtm.revenue-growth-agency, and that makes it a first party call, and basically work around allowing all the browser that now works for user data privacy not to block those scripts and ensure an efficient and accurate data tracking. So we're halfway, let's say 75% done. So once you've coded and followed exactly, paste this code as high in the head section, which is basically, so here, for example, we haven't exactly done that, and we'll need to change that. It's not as high as possible in the head section because it's almost at the bottom. Basically, if you want the best possible performance, you see that the head tag opens here. So it would have to be maybe, maybe let's say the first, or maybe just below the title is high enough. And the second thing they ask for you to do is paste this second script immediately after the opening body tag, which is, so I'm going to fold that head, and here the body tag is opening, and now we've done the job properly because the next thing after the body tag opening is the tag. So we'll need to replace this third party tag with a first party tag. So that's pretty much it for what you need to do in Stape and what you need to do on your website. Once you've done that, there's a bit of configuration on the GTM container, because so here is my web container. Again, most companies have that. Basically, just in one sentence, the benefit of your of GTM basically is that through the tag we paste on our website, the container takes data and then will send it to Google services, but you can create as many tags as you want here to send data to Facebook ad, TikTok ad, Pinterest ad, Google ads, Snapchat ads, you name it, LinkedIn ad, everything. And the benefit is before that, you would need to have a tag, one tag on your website for each of the service. Now, what it does is GTM is only one tag and streamlines this one tag and push the data to all of the service. Main benefit is that you don't have to modify the code of your web pages every morning or every time you add one new service. Another benefit is that you also decrease the loading time of your pages, because as you see, those scripts have to be placed as high as possible in the code, and that slows down the loading time. And now, I guess if you're an e-commerce professional, you know that the loading time plays a big role in conversion, plays a big role is in also your ranking on Google search engine, result pages, which is a big stake for the business. So Google Tag Manager, which usually takes place in your setup, in your current setup, mostly. And so what you can see here is that for example, let's say we want to track a purchase event and send it to our Google Google Analytics 4, then basically we would have this tag that would call that would be sent to our Google Google Analytics identity. And now with the new setup, what we want to do is we want to say, when we have an event to report to Google's Analytics, don't do it from the server tag, do it, sorry, for the web container tag, do it through the server tag. And so it's a little bit of setup. You would need to add this tag called GA4 configuration. And basically what it does, it says that your server container is located at the URL that we just created. And I'm going to update this. And so basically this says every data that needs to go to this Google Analytics 4 measurement ID needs to be sent to the server container, which is located at this URL. Now, once you do that, you have all the data that is passed. And what you need to do then is going to your server container and create two things. One thing is a client. So usually when you have your new server, you see I just created this one. It's by default, you do have the GA4 client. A client is basically a listener that will catch the data, and then the tag will analyze the data and treat it. It will know if, for example, if the data is for them or not, because depending on the data you pass from one country to another, not all services use the same data. So I'm going to create a GA4 tag. I'm going to put my measurement ID that can be found here or in Google's Analytics 4. Okay. Basically, you don't want to touch anything else. Normally, everything here is automatic. So I will call it GA4. And this is a notion that people who knows GTM will know, that you need to say when is the tag supposed to send data to the service, and that is done through a trigger. So here, the only trigger we want for this one is a trigger that says that when the client intercepts or receives any data and sees any data, we want that tag to fire, because basically Google's Analytics 4 will take any kind of data, a page view, a click, what they call user engagement, of course, an add to cart, a begin checkout, or a purchase. So in any case, on this one, we want that trigger that we call GA4 client to trigger, and we will create a custom event, and it will be any event where the client name contains GA4. And we saw that our client's, for instance, name was GA4. So yeah, let's put a star because it could be any event, and then save. I will save my tag. Okay, and here I do have a GA4 tag that will fire each time here the GA4 client with intercept data. So of course you will need to test that thoroughly, because depending on your website, you want to make sure that the main events, for example, purchase event, an add to cart event, will be picked up. And that depends on another thing that I can't go through here, but it's something to see with your dev team. It's called the data layer. So basically, your dev team will code events that will populate the data layer, and the data layer is what is listened to by GTM by default. But this is again something, but you need to make sure that your dev team populates a data layer for each type of events you want to see in your data. Just a last word on that. So here you can see that I can create tags and that you would have here templates for a lot of services. So of course, comes by default all the Google services here. And I think, yeah, so I think if you want to see Facebook, TikTok, and or LinkedIn or everything else, you would need to go to template and import here in the tag template. You would say search, you would click on search gallery, and then you can see that you have all kinds. So you have Awin for affiliation, you have ActiveCampaign for emails, you also have Klaviyo, and here, for example, if I do Facebook, then you would need to, so I know it's a little bit misleading because the one that you use for any reason, the one I use the Facebook logo, are made by Stape, a third party. But for instance, I've chosen after many tests to go with the vanilla official conversion API tag by Facebook. But yeah, and then add to workspace, add. And then here, when I go back to creating my new tag, and I will give you just last example, just to kind of cover a bit more for you. So I will here pick up my template that I just imported, and then there's a bit of config. Everything here you will find in your Facebook Event Manager, the pixel ID and the API access token. But then if your data layer is coded by your team, following a Google Tag Manager. So there is a doc. I mean, if you Google data layer Google Tag Manager, you will have an official documentation. All the specs are in. And if your dev team is doing that job correctly, you want to have nothing much than what I showed you today to do to achieve tracking the events for your service. So I think that that's about it. I don't know, Andy, if you maybe if you think I've forgot something, because there's so much that and I do that on a daily basis. So sometimes, it seems natural to me, but if you think there's something I haven't covered, or if you have question on any part of the setup, just don't hesitate to remind me.
No, I think that's fantastic. I think just on the data layer point, typically in a data layer, you would have product information like product name, you would have shipping information, any tax information, product value, you'd have that sort of thing. But yeah, as David said, there's an official documentation that's on the screen now really that A, will tell you a bit more about that, because it's probably out of the scope of this webinar. Maybe we do something like that in the future. Danielle, I know you're listening. Maybe that's something that we talk about, but it's essentially for e-commerce to understand that, because of course, as David said, in GA4 particularly, it talks more about events, and a lot of the events are related to the information that's within the data layer. So certainly do that. We'll circulate that URL directly to the tag manager. So I'll just share my screen back again, and we're at the section now where we'll just cover off any questions at all. I think, Danielle, if I just bring you in and just let us know if anything's cropped up. I know I think we had one earlier on about Shopify, but yeah, let us know what you want to start with, Danielle.
Yes, we have a couple of questions. We've had a couple about Shopify, so we'll definitely start there. So mainly talking about some of the apps that can be viewed in Shopify as citing first-party data. So there's some questions about whether this process is different for any brands using Shopify. Would we recommend using some of those integrations instead of using Stape? David, I know you have an opinion on this, so it'd be great to start there.
Yeah, so basically there are existing integration. So there's for example, if you use Facebook ads and Shopify, you will have by default, even without installing an app, for Google and Facebook ads, you'll have a native integration directly from Shopify. And that is first party by default. What that means that it uses an API to report all the events directly to Facebook and Google. And you can difficultly, make a better integration because it's really server to server. So yeah, my opinion is definitely use them. Now, as for Google Analytics, GA4, I have investigated and found a couple of apps. One was done by a company called Fueled.io, and that's a free app that basically makes a direct server-to-server integration between your Shopify and Google Analytics server. And again, it's hard to do better in terms of having the full pipe directly connected to server, a bit like what we've done today. Easier to set up. So yeah, there would be no reason why you wouldn't want to use them. I haven't investigated that much for WordPress, but the little I saw suggests that the same integration exists. And so again, use them for Facebook Conversion API, for Google Ads, and you will have plugins also for Google's Analytics. What I'm not sure, though, it would be for any other service like TikTok or LinkedIn. I would say TikTok and Shopify exists, but yeah, so pretty much, yeah. This, what we showed today, is very useful for people who are not on those platforms, or people who are on those platforms but want to make something a bit more custom. They want to have more possibility of customization, or maybe the business model is a bit different and they will need to track specific actions that are not vanilla to because in Shopify, the other thing and WordPress is that the data layer is created by those apps. And so if by any chance or by any unluck, the action you're after is not coded by, is not included in the list, you don't have a way to do that because those apps are fairly closed. You don't have, it does what 99% of people would need. But again, if you have special needs, you might not find what you're after.
I think just to jump in on this as well, what we're trying to achieve through this whole webinar is to provide you a solution to fix the data gap. And the solution to that is to migrate to server tracking. How you do that doesn't necessarily matter. So we've given you the view of GTM and going down that route. You can do it through other tools such as Shopify's own app marketplace and WordPress. So how you do it doesn't necessarily matter too much as long as you are using server-to-server tracking, because that avoids this calling of the browser off to a third party, which iOS 14 stopped Safari doing. And if Chrome follow, and there's some noise to say this year or next year they're going to do that, then all of your data will essentially become dark. And so it's not necessarily something that is an option, really. It's moving more towards a necessity. But how you do it and how you implement it doesn't matter as long as it's server to server.
Exactly.
Perfect. I think we've got time just for one more. And again, a couple of similar queries about how soon marketers can expect to see an increase in like the volume of data after implementing a solution like this. So obviously we've gone through the process today. How quickly can they expect to start seeing more data coming into GA4 or any of the other kind of native analytics, platform analytics?
Marcus is being impatient, hey Danielle, imagine that.
Oh, I know. Typical.
Go on, David, what's your thoughts on that? It's a pretty quick answer, that, isn't it?
Yeah, very quick answer, and I saw it for myself numerous time. It's super easy, super quick. Of course, because some business can have a different revenue figure, whether it's Monday or Thursday or a week in the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month or the end of the month. We'll have to take it into account, but apart from your natural seasonality, on the pure data perspective, you will see it right away. So as soon as a couple of days up to a week, you will notice a significant difference directly. And I've really seen it for myself. Again, if you have your eyes on Facebook Ads Manager and the reporting there, we'll also notice a difference. And I've seen brand drastically increase their ROAS, as it was mentioned by the BCG, that can testify that in real life, not only in BCG's world, which is very, very legit, one of the main consulting cabinets ever, but yeah, in real life, even for small people and smaller business or medium-sized business, you can see it right away. So yeah, very powerful, huge impact on ROAS, huge impact on the way algorithm like Facebook ads or Google ads go and fetch the right prospect for your brands, and that really makes a difference, and fairly quickly.
So just in summary, in theory, as soon as you change, when David talked you through that change in Google Tag Manager, where you amend the code with what is produced within Stave, in theory, as soon as you switch that code and it's live on the site, you are then from that point tracking first-party data onwards. It just takes a few days for you to see it maybe and see the sort of spikes in the graphs within Google Analytics or within your Facebook Ad Manager. So it's pretty instant. I think it's worth mentioning as well that it's not that you're missing revenue. You'll still see the same level of revenue that you see in Shopify, for example, or WooCommerce or Ometria or wherever else your system's data is based. The benefit and the reason why there's an almost immediate impact on ROAS is because of the data that you're feeding into the platforms that are generating you the revenue, such as Facebook or TikTok or Google Ads. It's what those platforms and what you can do with that increased visibility of data that impacts the growth in revenue. So it's just important to measure that. It's not all of a sudden you're going to uncover $9 million worth of revenue overnight. You will see a huge spike in the volume of visitors that you can see to your site almost instantly, but it's what you do with that increase in visibility of data, or your agency does more importantly with the increase in that visibility of data, that will really drive your ROAS forward.
I think it's worth mentioning that we've seen a lot of clients saying we have a huge gap on the revenue in our cash till vs the revenue we see in the likes of Google's Analytics. And as soon as we put them first party, then the GA will report 99% of the revenue that is in the cash till. That is not indeed where a revenue increase is expected, because in real life the cash till will stay the same. But we can, first benefit is that the decision we can take now with Google's Analytics data being full can be different, and it can impact long-term strategy, long-term strategic decision, etc. And the second thing, in the algorithm working better, can also slowly in time provide revenue increase, but not from one day to another. The data gap in what we can see on the charts is immediate. The revenue increase we can expect with all the let's say, machine learning systems like Facebook ads, etc., we can expect for them exist, but it's a bit more long term.
Cool. Anything else, Danielle?
I think that's the majority of the questions were centered around those two topics. So I think we'll leave it there. We're just coming up to 11:15, so I think we're just about there for time as well, which is nice.
Unusual for us.
Yes.
Brill. Okay, so thanks for watching. Hope you found it informative. What we wanted to achieve today, of course, was two things. One is to raise the awareness to brands that aren't using server-to-server tracking yet, and therefore missing big chunks of the data. So hopefully you feel like you're more aware of the data gap and why it's important. And the idea of this webinar being recorded is so that when we send it through to all the attendees, when you go back over it, you can use it and pause the video of where David walked you through each step and slowly follow each of those steps through. What I will say is that my email address is on screen. David's email address is on screen as well. If you've got any questions at all about any little bit of the process or anything else, please feel free to make a note of the email addresses and contact us directly, as the case may be. We've also got a form on our website. If you want a quick chat about anything, please feel free to do so. But yeah, thanks for watching. We are going to do more of this sort of 45 minute webinar in an upcoming series of all sorts of different topics. So stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you on one of those in the next few weeks.